My name is Riley Thompson. I'm 34 years old, and last week I found out what it feels like to be erased, quietly, efficiently, and without apology. I paid for everything: the flights, the villa, the private driver, with a placard that would have said, Thompson family. $12,700, 0 cents in total, including the upgraded seats and the vineyard tour Mom always said she dreamed of. I triple confirmed the dates, printed hard copies because she still liked to hold things in her hands, and uploaded the whole itinerary to a shared folder titled Italy Finally. I should have known. The warning signs were there. But I ignored them. Maybe because you don't expect betrayal from people you've booked first class for. We arrived early at the airport. I had packed light, just a carry-on and a book I knew I wouldn't get to read. Julie was smiling as usual, phone in one hand, latte in the other. Mom kept checking her bag, acting flustered. I walked ahead to the counter, gave my name with a polite nod. The attendant scanned, paused, tapped something on the keyboard. Riley Thompson, she asked. There's no reservation under your name. Do you have a confirmation email? I froze. I had everything. I pulled out my phone, opened the app, but the code bounced back. Invalid passenger. Behind me, Julia laughed at something Kyle whispered. Kyle was standing where I should have been, holding a boarding pass with the seat I booked for myself. I looked at my mother. She blinked slowly like someone seeing fog. That's strange, she said. There must be a system error. But her voice was too calm. Rehearsed. I didn't speak, I just looked at Julia. She shrugged. We thought Kyle could take your place. You've been so busy lately anyway. You always say you don't like flying with us. That was a lie, I never said that. I booked this trip. Every dinner, every excursion, every bed. I even made sure Mom didn't have to walk far between terminals. Kyle had nothing to do with this. He was just convenient. I said nothing. I didn't fight. I opened my banking app. I didn't scream. I didn't ask for an explanation. I tapped into the linked cards and froze every single one. I logged into the Airbnb account, changed the password, reset the digital door code. I opened the shared itinerary folder and deleted every file. Then I walked away, one slow step at a time, like I was never invited to begin with. They always said I was the organized one, not in a flattering way, more like a quiet assignment I didn't remember volunteering for. I kept the birthdays memorized, booked the tables when we went out, noticed the small things, like which charger Mom needed for her Kindle or whether Julia's allergy had changed brands again. I didn't ask for praise. I just thought that's what people did when they cared. I wasn't the loud one, not the achiever, not the problem. I was just useful. And that usefulness became currency, expected, not acknowledged. Growing up, Julia was the front row of every school event, cheer captain, class speaker. She brought home attention like it was a trophy. I brought home stability. Mom said I was her rock, but only when she needed something. Riley, you're so reliable. Could you check on this? Could you figure this out? It started early, small errands, calendar reminders, translating bills when Mom got overwhelmed. I never questioned it. Julia called it my fix-it mode, like it was some tick I couldn't unlearn. But I didn't fix things because I was desperate for approval. I fixed them because I didn't want anyone to fall, even when I was the one being stepped on. When Dad passed, I moved back for a while to help Mom sort things. Julia flew in for the weekend. I stayed 3 months. I missed a promotion at work. No one thanked me. They said it was just what family does. That line was a favorite. I held on to it longer than I should have. Even when I started making enough to live well, I didn't splurge. I saved. I planned. I paid off my student debt while Julia refinanced hers 3 times. Mom said, she's just wired differently. I knew that meant Julia would never have to tighten the belt, not when I was around. But I didn't resent them. Not really. I just told myself they needed more than I did, and maybe they did. At least that's what I believed, right up until the moment they decided I was optional, replaced, deleted. Like a detail in a spreadsheet they thought I wouldn't notice missing. But I noticed. I always notice. I just don't always react. Not out loud. It didn't start with this trip, it never does. It started with points. That's what Mom called them when she asked to use my credit card rewards just this once. It was for her birthday weekend in Charleston. You always find the best deals, she said. I booked the flights, the hotel, even arranged a walking tour she never showed up for. When she came home, she brought back a mug that said, "Bless, no thanks." No offer to split the cost, just the mug. Then came the other requests. Quiet ones. Julia's friend was getting married in Colorado. "Could you help with the airfare? It's just until my paycheck clears." Or, "When the AC broke at Mom's house and I volunteered to cover the technician's bill because Julia was already stretched and Mom was on a fixed income. I had no kids, no mortgage, a job that let me work remotely. I could afford to help." That's what I told myself. And every time, they left the door open for it to happen again. No one ever closed the loop. No one ever said, "We'll pay you back." They just moved on like the money came from the sky, not my spreadsheet. I started tracking it, not out of bitterness, but necessity. I'm a systems person. I color code things. I created a column labeled Family Flex Support. I watched it grow. 500 here, 1,200 there, flights, rent help, deposits, spa days, emergencies. They always had names that sounded innocent. One time, Julia asked if I could hold the Airbnb booking for a trip she was planning with friends. I did. They canceled. She never reimbursed me. Another time, Mom asked me to sign up for a subscription service just for the trial, but forgot to cancel after 6 months. I ate the charge. Again, the worst part was that they didn't even see it as taking. To them, it was love in action, family pulling together. I'd hear phrases like, "We're so lucky to have you," and "I don't know what we'd do without Riley," but only when they needed something. Gratitude lived in their mouths but never made it to their actions. There was no apology when I had to cut a vacation short because Julia booked my calendar with her needs. No recognition when Mom stayed in my apartment for 6 weeks after a pipe burst in hers and complained about the mattress. I let them take because saying no felt like closing a door they never bothered to knock on. That's what made this trip different. This wasn't me being used. This was me being erased, replaced. And somehow they thought I wouldn't notice, or worse, that I'd notice and do nothing, like I always had. The trip was supposed to be a gift, not a holiday, a gesture, something that would say, "You're seen, you're valued, let's finally do something together." I had saved for it, quietly, methodically, line by line. 3 round-trip flights, premium seats because Mom's back couldn't handle cramped ones, a villa with 3 bedrooms so no one would have to share, a private car from the airport with a bilingual driver because Mom still panicked when she couldn't understand someone. Every part was customized to what they liked. Julia didn't like group tours, so I booked private ones. Mom didn't like walking too far, so I chose accommodations near every major landmark. Even the food mattered. Julia hated seafood, so no seaside towns. Mom had celiac, so I called ahead to restaurants in Florence to confirm gluten-free options. I built the entire itinerary like a project at work. I had color-coded folders, backups saved to the cloud, QR codes printed and laminated. I even brought a hard copy of everything in a zippered pouch because last year Mom said, "Not everything has to be on a screen." I titled the master document Italy Finally because it was the trip we'd postponed for 5 years. First it was money, then Dad's illness, then the funeral, then grief. I waited through Julia's breakup, through Mom's surgery, through the endless maybe next summers, and when I finally said it's booked, there were no excited screams. Just a quiet, "Oh wow," and "That's generous." I didn't care. I just wanted them to come. I sent calendar invites, confirmation emails, maps. I built a WhatsApp group and pinned messages for each city. Rome, Florence, Siena. I added a shared packing checklist. Julia never opened it. Mom replied with a thumbs up emoji once. That was all. I thought it was just their way, that I shouldn't expect enthusiasm, that this was for them, not for me. And I kept saying that even as the charges piled in. $3,100, 0 cents on airfare. $5,400, 0 cents on lodging. $2,700, 0 cents on transportation, guides, advanced ticketing. Not because they couldn't afford it. Julia had just gotten a bonus. Mom had inheritance from Aunt Eileen. But because they didn't offer, they never even asked how much it cost, not once. They assumed I could cover it. That's the word, assumed, like it was my role, like I was the admin for their lives, the walking credit card who also made dinner reservations. The funny thing is, I didn't mind. Not until I saw what they did with all that planning, all that effort. They handed it to someone else. Like I was just the placeholder. the one who gets everything ready but isn't meant to be in the photo. And still, even then, I blame myself for being disappointed. Like maybe I had expected too much. Like maybe I shouldn't have cared that I was being left behind. Again, the signs weren't loud. That's how betrayal usually works. It doesn't come with flashing lights or dramatic music. It comes softly, disguised as jokes or harmless comments you decide not to analyze too deeply. A week before the flight, Mom asked if I thought the airline allowed last-minute changes. Just curious, she said. I was reading something about names needing to match the passport exactly. She'd flown internationally before. She knew the rules. Then Julia texted if someone wanted to join us late, would there still be a spot in the Airbnb? I said no. It was 3 bedrooms, 3 people. Just wondering, she replied. Don't be so rigid. Rigid. That word sat in my chest like a tack. A few days later, I noticed Kyle had liked one of the posts I made about the trip, a photo of the villa. He commented, "Looks amazing. Hope it's not wasted on old ladies." Julia laughed in the replies. I didn't say anything either. I told myself it was just banter. I told myself Kyle wasn't part of this. He had his own life. Why would he care about a trip that didn't involve him? I was wrong. 2 nights before departure, Julia called to ask if I could resend her e-ticket. Mine didn't come through, she said. I forwarded it. 5 minutes later, she replied, "Thanks. Kyle thinks the flights look too early, but whatever." Kyle, again. I stared at the text. Why would Kyle be discussing the flights if he wasn't going? I considered asking, then didn't. I didn't want to sound accusatory. I didn't want to seem paranoid. I just wanted things to go smoothly. That's what I told myself. And maybe that's the worst part, that I was more concerned with not creating a scene than with protecting myself. That I saw the holes forming and chose to patch them quietly instead of asking why they were there in the first place. I made myself small so their comfort could stay large. I adjusted again and again and again until the only thing left to remove from the equation was me. At the airport, it didn't hit all at once. It came in layers, like fog rolling in, slow and deliberate. The gate agent's confused look. The way my name didn't show up, even though I held every receipt. The way Mom's voice trembled just enough to seem concerned, but her eyes stayed calm. Too calm, like someone who had practiced this moment. And Julia didn't even fake surprise. She just smiled and said it made more sense this way. Kyle stood next to her, wearing his usual smug nonchalance, boarding pass in hand. The one I bought. He didn't speak. Didn't need to. His presence said enough. I looked at my mother again. She sighed as if this situation was an inconvenience for her. "It was just easier," she murmured. "You've been working so much, and you don't even like flying with us, remember?" I didn't remember saying that, probably because I never had. But they didn't need it to be true. They just needed it to sound plausible enough to justify what they had done. Kyle, now somehow a better fit, was holding my seat, my itinerary, my plans, the trip I spent months building around their needs, their likes, their sensitivities, handed over to someone who didn't even know how to pronounce the names of the cities. Julia stepped closer, lowered her voice. "You overthink things. Don't make this a big deal. Kyle can go. You'll feel better staying behind, trust me." It wasn't just the betrayal. It was how casual it was, how neatly they'd packaged my absence like a scheduling conflict. Like I had RSVP'd, maybe, to my own life. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I didn't ask them to fix it. Instead, I reached into my bag, unlocked my phone, and opened the finance dashboard. One by one, I froze every payment method tied to the trip. The tickets, the villa, the car service, even the restaurant reservations that required prepayment. I reset the Airbnb lock code. I revoked access to the shared drive. I deleted every confirmation PDF from the folder. I stood there quietly as they began to realize something had changed. Not loudly, not with drama, but with the kind of silence that doesn't need explaining. I turned and walked away. Not in anger, not in grief, just done. I didn't go home. I checked into a small hotel near the airport under a different name, paid in cash, turned off my phone's location. I wasn't hiding. I was detaching. The room smelled faintly of cleaning fluid and old carpet, but it was quiet. I sat on the edge of the bed and waited for the noise to catch up to me. The texts started an hour later. First, Mom, something's wrong with the tickets. They're saying the booking was canceled. Then Julia, are you messing with the Airbnb code? It's not working. I didn't respond. I watched them come in, message after message, confusion turning into panic. Then came Kyle, the first and only time he ever texted me. Hey, can you just fix this? We're standing here looking stupid. I stared at the screen for a moment, then powered off the phone. I lay on the bed and listened to the silence. A kind of negative space where guilt used to live. By the next morning, the voicemail box was full. Julia's tone had shifted. Sharp. Clipped. You made your point. Now stop being dramatic. Kyle had nothing to do with this. Then Mom. This is disappointing, Riley. Family doesn't do this to each other. I almost laughed. Family doesn't do this to each other. As if I had started it. As if I was the one who made a quiet decision to replace my sister on a trip she paid for. But I didn't laugh. I just reopened the banking app and closed every shared utility. Streaming services, subscriptions, auto payments. I changed my Amazon password. I called the credit card company and flagged several large charges as compromised. I spoke with a lawyer. Not to sue, not yet, but to document, to record the pattern. Emotional abuse doesn't always come with bruises. Sometimes it's just a stack of invoices and a trail of expectations that were never yours to carry. I went out that afternoon, wandered through a local bookstore, bought a coffee from a place I'd never tried. It was average, that felt right. Not everything needed to be special, some things could just be mine. Quiet, unremarkable, mine. That night I lay in the dark and didn't cry. I didn't scroll through old texts. I didn't check social media to see what they were posting. I didn't wonder where they were or how they'd managed without me. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I owed anyone a response, not even myself. They didn't stay quiet. People like them never do. When silence doesn't serve their control, they fill it with noise. By the end of the second day, I received a formal email from Julia with the subject line, unacceptable behavior. She CC'd Mom. She CC'd Kyle. She wrote about the emotional distress I caused, about the financial loss, about how my choices reflect a deep lack of maturity. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened the folder marked legal on my laptop and began to document everything: dates, screenshots, booking confirmations, payments, every time they used my cards, every email they ignored, every moment I carried something so they didn't have to. I didn't plan to sue them, but I wanted to be ready when they threatened to sue me, which came 3 days later in the form of a letter sent to my old apartment. It had been forwarded to my office. Inside, a neatly typed notice from a family friend who also happened to be a lawyer, and claimed damages from a willful disruption of a prepaid group itinerary. I laughed quietly at the phrase. I'd prepaid it, yes. I had disrupted it, yes. But willful? No. That part belonged to them. Julia posted a vague story that afternoon, a photo of a suitcase and a wine glass with the caption, "Some people don't value blood." I didn't watch it, but a mutual friend sent me a screenshot. I muted them all, one by one. Kyle's Instagram went private. Mom stopped texting. The group thread we used to plan holidays went silent. I expected relief. What I felt was something colder, sharper. Not grief, not rage, just the full realization that they had never seen me as equal. I was the enabler, the resource, the solution. And when I removed myself, they didn't ask why. They demanded a replacement. They expected an undoing. I gave them none. A week later, I changed apartments. Quietly. No forwarding address. I left the spare keys behind the breaker box in the old hallway. Mom used to keep a copy there. Let the next tenant deal with it. I bought new furniture. Nothing fancy. One chair, one table, a mattress. No more shared accounts. No shared bills. No shared passwords. The first morning in that space, I made coffee in silence. The cheap kettle didn't whistle like the old one. That was fine. I wasn't waiting for anyone to hear it. The unraveling didn't happen all at once. It began like cracks in a frozen lake, small, silent, spreading beneath the surface. I heard through a cousin that Julia and Kyle never made it to the villa. The lock code failed. The host reported suspicious activity. There were police involved briefly because Julia insisted there had been fraud. She left a scathing review that was later removed for violating platform policies. Kyle deleted his account. Mom tried to rebook something nearby, but it was high season and prices had surged. They ended up in a noisy budget hotel on the outskirts of town. A story Julia posted from a cramped room disappeared in less than an hour, but someone had screen captured it. They were eating gas station snacks. There was no vineyard, no guided tour, no private driver waiting with their name, just taxis they had to call themselves, museums they couldn't get into because tickets were tied to my name. I didn't gloat. I didn't feel vindicated. I just observed, coldly, from distance, like someone watching a play she no longer felt a part of. Days later, a distant aunt messaged me. "We're all worried about your mom. She's not herself." No apology, no context, just that. As if my silence had caused a ripple too loud to ignore. I didn't answer. Then came the email from Julia. No subject, just a sentence. "I hope you're happy." I read it twice and deleted it. There was nothing to reply to. The same afternoon, I received a call from a credit union where my father had once co-signed a loan for Julia's business idea. The officer said they flagged irregular financial dependencies between accounts. Loan declined. The algorithm did what no family member would, held Julia accountable. I didn't file a report. I didn't contact anyone. I just let the system speak. My mother tried calling again. Her voicemail said, "If you keep this up, no one will speak to you again." The threat landed hollow. They had already stopped speaking to me. What she meant was, I wasn't doing my part. Quiet, compliance, financial forgiveness. The unspoken agreement that I exist to make their lives easier. And now that I'd stepped away, the machinery had stalled. They weren't angry because I'd hurt them. They were angry because I'd stopped making their choices convenient. That was the real betrayal in their eyes, not what they did to me. But that I noticed and left. I thought it would fade, that after a few weeks the noise would stop, the attempts would dry up, and I'd move on. But it didn't fade, it evolved. One afternoon I opened my work inbox and saw an email flagged urgent. An anonymous complaint had been filed against me for misuse of professional resources. There was no detail, just vague phrases, hollow accusations. My manager slid the paper across her desk, eyes soft with understanding. "We know this isn't real. Just giving you a heads up, the file's closed." I nodded. I knew exactly who had sent it. They hadn't reached me through text or voicemail, so now they'd tried to reach through the cracks in my professional life. But that crack didn't open. It sealed shut before I even left the room. Later that night, I got a text from a name I didn't recognize at first. My cousin's ex-fiancé. We'd barely spoken during family events. She wrote, "I saw what happened. I just want you to know I left because of how they treated you. You were the only one who saw it for what it was." That message I saved. I didn't reply, but I read it twice. Then I turned off my phone and sat on the balcony of my new apartment. No candle, no drink. Just a breeze and a skyline that didn't care where I'd been. I watched the sun fall behind buildings that didn't ask questions, didn't need context. The air felt still, but not hollow. For once, it wasn't filled with expectation. I wasn't on call. No one needed a favor. No one had access to anything but their own lives. And mine was mine. I didn't owe updates, didn't owe forgiveness, didn't owe space in my calendar or on my credit card. I wasn't being strong or brave or heroic. I was just done. The kind of done that doesn't come with fireworks or speeches. It comes with stillness. With a chipped mug in one hand and a locked door behind you and no spare key taped to the breaker box. The strange thing about peace is that it doesn't arrive like a parade. It doesn't announce itself. It seeps in quietly, like light through thin curtains at dawn. You don't notice the exact moment it begins. You just look up one day and realize there's no more waiting, no more watching, no more tightness in your chest when your phone buzzes. That happened on a Tuesday. I was at the grocery store buying food for one. No bulk packs, no special gluten-free items, no snacks that weren't mine. I paused at the coffee aisle, picked a cheap brand, the kind no one else in my old life would have touched. It was bitter and plain and completely sufficient. At home, I cooked in silence, no one interrupting, no comments about seasoning or portions or timing, just a pan, a spoon, and heat. I ate on the floor, no couch yet, no TV. I hadn't decorated, the walls were blank, the shelves still empty. But the room didn't feel hollow. It felt new. undemanding, free. My phone stayed face down for hours. When I did check it, there was nothing, no missed calls, no guilt trips, no crisis disguised as conversation, just a promotional email and a message from my building manager about recycling. I smiled, not because it was joyful, but because it was quiet. The kind of quiet that didn't ask for anything. Later that night, I pulled out a book I hadn't touched in months. I read the first 20 pages without distraction, no one asking if I'd seen their charger, no one wondering what was for dinner, no one walking into the room needing something that was never mine to give. That was the first night I fell asleep without running over old conversations in my head, without rewriting what I should have said, without imagining a version of events where they acted differently. I stopped trying to redeem them in my mind. I stopped trying to find a version of the story where I wasn't the villain simply for drawing a line. They made me into something cold. I let them. For a long time, I thought if I just kept showing up, kept helping, kept absorbing the discomfort, they'd eventually see me as more than what I gave. But they didn't. And now, finally, I didn't need them to. That was the peace, not silence, not revenge, just release. Nothing owed, nothing withheld. Just the freedom of no longer being the one who keeps everything from falling apart. But let it fall, I wasn't going to catch it. The letter came 3 weeks later, forwarded from the old apartment. White envelope, her handwriting on the front, neat, careful, the same way she used to label holiday gifts when appearances mattered. No return address, just my full name, written like a formality. I opened it slowly. Inside a single page. We were just trying to keep the family together. You tore it apart. That was it. No apology, no ownership, just the quiet deflection of someone who still believed my boundary was the problem, not their behavior. I didn't get angry. I didn't cry. I placed a letter in the kitchen sink, turned on the tap, and watched the ink blur until it looked like nothing. Then I dropped it into the trash with the coffee grounds. That afternoon, I deleted the last shared folder, the one with the backup contacts, the family tree, the medical info I had kept updated for everyone's convenience. I revoked their access to my calendar, my cloud, my world. The next morning, I changed my number. No announcement, no farewell, just silence, the kind of silence that isn't empty, it's earned. They erased me first. They just didn't expect me to stay gone. But I didn't vanish out of spite. I vanished because staying meant shrinking, because loyalty isn't obedience, because being needed isn't the same as being loved. Now I go to sleep without wondering who might need saving. I wake up and make coffee in a chipped mug I bought for 75 cents. I don't track birthdays anymore. I don't send reminders. I don't check if they're okay. I assume they're not. That's not my problem. I've learned that freedom doesn't feel like flight. It feels like not being watched. Not being asked, not being used, just existing in your own time, your own space, without owing anyone the version of yourself they prefer. I'm not angry, I'm just done. I don't miss them. I miss who I used to be before I mistook sacrifice for connection, before I let my silence be interpreted as consent. I'm not cold, I'm clear. I'm not broken and clean. I'm not coming back.